Hi, it's Maya here, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 3 villains. I'm taking part in the Booktube Reading Buddies Fancy February challenge, and there are these mini challenges set throughout the month. And today it is all about sharing our top 3 villains. So let's get started. My very favorite fancy villain is the gentleman with the thistle-down hair from Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. He's a fairy, a sort of an elf from the land of fairy, and he's immoral and full of himself, and he doesn't really buy into man's morals. He's a sort of very different sort of creature, and there's something very compelling about him. I love him and he cracks me up. I'm going to read to you what he looks like. Someone was standing in the middle of the room. A tall, handsome person with pale, perfect skin and an immense amount of hair, as pale and shining as Thistledown. His cold blue eyes glittered, and he had long, dark eyebrows, which terminated in an upward flourish. He was dressed exactly like any other gentleman, except that his coat was of the brightest green imaginable, the color of leaves in early summer. And this is how he talks about himself. You elected to summon me because my genius for magic exceeds that of all the rest of my race. Because I am valorous, chivalrous, generous, and as handsome as the day is long. That is all quite understood. It would have been madness to summon anyone else. We both know who I am. The question is, who in the world are you? So that's sort of how he talks all the time. And I have this thing about self-centered characters. Perhaps not pretty healthy, but I love them. The next villain on my list is very different. I absolutely loathe him. And he is Littlefinger, Peter Baelish from A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. He is absolutely horrible and I hate him so much, but I do not hate him like Joffrey or Ramsay. He's not this sort of a brutal monster. So he's very clever, and even though I absolutely loathe him, there's sort of this admiration for him mixed into it, because he is so good at sort of handling things from behind the scenes. So yeah, Littlefinger. Hate that guy. And the third one could be sort of debatable, but I think he is portrayed as the villain in this particular book, and that is The Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. And of course I'm talking about Lestat de Liancourt. In the following novels he's more of an anti-hero because the novels are in his point of view. And in this one he is often, in Louis' opinion, a villain. You can't argue that he does some pretty horrible things and says some pretty horrible things. I think he's a very good example of a charming villain. Those 3 were my top 3 villains from books. If we were talking about movies, there would be a lot more. I'm also a Disney fan, so a lot of my favorite villains are actually Disney villains. My very favorite being Jafar from Disney's Aladdin, and I also love the very new Dr. Facilier from The Princess and the Frog. There's also Hades from Hercules, and Maleficent is pretty cool. So yeah, I really love Disney villains. But this video wasn't supposed to be about movies, so those 3 were my top 3 fancy villains. What villains do you love and what villains do you absolutely loathe? And do you still sort of love them?